The concept for my project is this idea of the presence of absence, in the sense that we were working in a vast horizontal landscape in Australia. My question is, how can architecture start to reveal the subtle qualities of that place? In thinking about the Aboriginal culture, they had a very profound obligation to the landscape. So my project very much becomes a landscape project, sort of emerging from the earth and moving towards the sky to start to become a visual observation to the cosmos. I became very interested in this idea of layered experience. So it deals with reflections, transparencies, and various layers of opacity to start to create a spatial depth in this sort of seemingly empty place.
This is a place where shadow, cosmic dust, and desert sand dance together through the occupiable thresholds of 7 fallen stars. The process of making them and the idea of a thick, massive wall that thinned out and peeled open to the universe was integral to the design. Aboriginal societies of Australia could explain cosmological phenomena through their understanding of the landscape. In one dream time from the Northern Territory, a star plummeted from the night sky and became buried in the sand, forming a crater. This architectural proposal imagines 7 evening stars have fallen into the desert landscape. Each form has grounded itself in the sand, but reaches back to the heavens, peeling open for sunlight and curling its corners to the moon. Beginning heavily in the underground, the architecture stretches out and dematerializes, deferring to the universe. The flowing nature of the forms, the shadows, guide people to walk toward the horizon.
As an artist coming into the realm of architecture, my way of getting into the site and understanding the people who inhabit the site was through their visual art. And so I looked at a lot of Aboriginal paintings and how those relate to their concept of dream time and the song lines, which is their way of understanding their landscape. My project looks at that visual language and tries to translate it into creating a space that occupies that middle ground and creates experiences within that building which are true to the experience of how Aborigines people would move through the landscape and understand their landscape. And so through watercolor studies and paper models, I spent a lot of time looking at how light activates those spaces. My building is based on the shape of 2 boomerangs intersecting over the middle, coming together of 2 of those song lines in the landscape. And then on top of that, the walls and the ceiling flow together and loop back onto each other in a way that was typical of the song lines in those renderings the Aborigines people made.
My project starts from how the universe follows the logarithmic proportions of the golden spiral. I'm also inspired by the rocky triangular form of the Ayers Rock. And the third inspiration comes from how the Australian Aboriginal people believes in dreamtime. I'm using Fibonacci triangles to form this rocky and triangular architecture. But in section, it's actually a compression of different triangular spaces. And the different scales of triangulars also creates different light and shadows, from just slices of light to big openings of the view to the landscape.
What struck me from the site is the strong contrast between the flat landscape and the high rocks formation that is Uluru and Katachuja. When you're approaching Uluru and Katachuja, your perception of the surrounding totally changes. My building is like 2 blocks facing and compressing the space in between. So when you are inside this compressed space, you want to turn your gaze upward to the sky, because I need to have a space that was deep and high enough to have the sensation of compression of your perception. I wanted my building appear like a monolith carved inside by wind and by rain, like a monolith, like the Uluru and Katachuja formation.
So my project is about the 7 sisters, which is an ancestral Aboriginal story about 7 sisters traveling across the country and they're being chased. And it takes inspiration from the 7 sisters star cluster, which is otherwise known as Pleiades, which is part of the Taurus constellation. And so the idea was to create 7 sisters, which are 7 different rooms, traveling across the desert and expressing movement, having similar qualities to one another, but being different. Each room itself focuses toward the sky, opening up toward the top, becoming an observatory. Each one has a fireplace in the center, encouraging gathering at night and looking upward toward the sky. At night when the fires are lit in each of the sisters, viewed from above, it appears to be a constellation.